Hello, I'm David Parker. I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney, and I'll be talking to you on this video about wills. What are they, and what are the advantages and the disadvantages of having a will? Well, a will is really the most basic estate planning document. Even though it's the most basic document, it can be simple or it can be complex depending on what you want to achieve with your estate planning. What are your goals? Now, the important thing about a will is it has to be written down. It has to be signed and notarized properly. And one thing I'll say about New York, where I practice, is New York is very strict on the rules. If it's not done correctly, New York State will not recognize it. A handwritten note attached to the will and simply notarized is not going to be sufficient to, as a will or to change terms of a will. And if it's crossed out or other things, you're going to invalidate the whole will. Now, let's talk about the advantages of a will. The first advantage is that with a will you can name your executor, you can name, that's the person who's going to be in charge of the estate, you can name the guardian of your children, and name the various people who are going to be involved doing things in your estate plan. You can direct that the estate pay your debts, your taxes, or any other expenses as opposed to having somebody else pay for that. You can also direct how the assets go to your heirs, equally to all my children, or my son, the investment banker, I'm only leaving a small portion of my estate and the rest goes to my child who is a teacher, etc. So we can decide how the assets go to heirs. Another advantage is that a will is flexible. If you go to the video on trust, you're going to see that one of the issues with trust is you have to retitle your assets. It's not a complicated process, but you have to keep track of what you own. So the flexibility of a will is you don't have to do that. It simply takes care of everything after you pass away. And then lastly, a will is less expensive. So a will is generally much cheaper than doing a trust or other types of estate plans. Let's talk about the disadvantages of having a will. The disadvantages of having a will is that you're going to guarantee court involvement. It's very important for people to understand in using a will that a will does not avoid probate. A will in fact guarantees probate. And so what you're faced with is in order to distribute the assets under the terms of the will, you have to get the court involved. You're going to have to go out, hire a lawyer, and go through the probate court process. Now in another video, I'm going to talk about the probate court process, and you can understand the ins and outs of that and why some people may feel that it's time-consuming and difficult. Now, the thing about a will is when you're dealing with probate, probate is time-consuming. It take anywhere from 5 months to a year to go through the probate process until you're finished, and that's because you're using a will. Another issue with using a will is that if you have assets in more than one state, really if you own real property, so you have a home here in New York and then you have another home down in Florida, if you have to go through probate, you're going to have to hire an attorney in New York to go through probate here in New York and a completely new attorney down in Florida, because you're going to have to probate that asset in Florida under the laws of Florida. So your kids are going to have to go out and hire 2 attorneys in order to transfer the properties. Another disadvantage of probate is privacy. Remember I said you have to get court involvement. As part of the probate process, you have to list all your assets and all your different debts, etc., everything that's done with the estate. It's filed with court. Well, guess what happens when it's filed with court? It's a public document. And as we see the courts going to electronic filing, in fact, most of New York State within the next 2 years will probably have electronic filing. It's going to be much easier for somebody just to go on the internet and guess what? Find out everything that you owned when you passed away. If privacy is an issue, that's a reason alone to not use a will. One other disadvantage of the will you have to understand is that a will has absolutely no use. A will cannot be used until a person passes away. So if mom or dad have a stroke, you cannot walk into the bank and say, I am the executor of the will, they're in the hospital, I want to get control of mom or dad's bank accounts. That's no good. A will can only be used after the parent passes away. And lastly, the expense. Remember I said a minute ago that the advantage of having a will is it doesn't cost that much. That's right, it doesn't cost that much when you create the will. But when your kids have to deal with the probate process, probate can be very, very expensive. There was a study done at one point that said that the probate process can cost anywhere from 2.5% to 5% of the value of the estate. Now think what that means if you have a $500,000 estate. You're talking about your kids paying $25,000 in probate costs. That's a lot of money. So, if you're thinking about doing a will, it's important to understand the advantages and the disadvantages of doing a will. Our office will be happy to do wills for our clients. If you're interested in doing a will or interested in talking more about estate planning, please give me a call or email me and we'll set up an appointment.